Hello, friends. Do you have a moment so that we may discuss our Lord and Savior Minarchy? No, seriously, I'm just kidding. Hi, my name's Rick Robinson. I am the general manager of KLRNradio.com. We are probably the largest independent podcast network that you've never heard of. We have a little bit of everything, and by that, what I mean to tell you is we have news, pop culture, special events, conspiratainment, true crime, mental health shows, drama productions, and pretty much everything in between. So if you're looking for a new podcast home to grab a little bit of everything that you love all in one place, come check us out. You can find us on X under @KLRNradio. You can find us on our Rumble and our YouTube channels under the same names. You can also find us at KLRNradio.com and pretty much every podcast catcher known to man. So again, feel free to come check us out anytime you like at KLRNradio.
Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
He's for an oath to make a difference. Ran for danger while others turned away. Now it seems the world's against him, and no one knows quite what to say. Live the life and follow the path forged in fire. Burning bright through the darkest night. Though the world may turn its back on him, he still stands. Won't lose the fight. He walked through fire with no applause. Carry burdens that nobody saw. Judgmental words and there's that wound. A price has been paid that few can understand. Live the life and follow the path forged in fire. current member of law enforcement. Thank you.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
And welcome into the Friday edition of the Rick Robinson Show. Hang on. I was doing some music editing last night, so my ears are not dialed in quite right just yet, and it just occurred to me. That was loud. All right, anyway. So, good morning. I know, unorthodox opening, but what can I say? So, for those of you who just heard that for the first time, that musical concept has been rattling around in my brain for like a couple of weeks now, even before all this started happening. Because law enforcement, dude. Yeah, I'm just gonna rewind us back to the land of yesteryear when Barack Obama was trying to convince us we didn't need police officers anymore. That was around the same time they were telling everybody, "Oh, just go ahead and give up your guns. It's all right because the cops will still have them." And then, like 5 minutes later, Barack Obama decided he hated police officers, and we've been living in a world of hell ever since. So that's a concept that's been with me for a while. Um, what's happening in the news cycle obviously reignited it, but I still felt like there was a piece missing. I couldn't get the mix just right, and it occurred to me last night how to do it. So after I finished running streams for BZ around midnight, that's when I had, in the words of Smee from Hook, I had an apostrophe. Lightning has struck me brain, and I figured out how to get it all mixed together, and then I spent a couple hours finishing it up and making sure it was all tweaked just right. But there you have it. That's the newest one from KLR Radio House Band, Forged in Fire. For those of you who don't know, we are actually starting to put music out through a label. It's my label though, so I don't know if it counts to most people because they're like, it's not really a label. You just started it. Well, eventually, hopefully, I'll have other people putting out music through my label too. But it is Kung Fu Rick Productions. First one that came out, you guys have heard me play here quite often because, I usually stress test them before I release them. So, Freedom Isn't Free came out first. We Ain't Changed comes out next week sometime, if memory serves. And then this one is in the pipeline too, along with a couple of others. So we'll probably have new music coming out about every 2 weeks for most of the next 6 months or so. And once I get enough stuff put together, I plan on doing a couple of EPs and maybe even like a full on, you know, uh, record release instead of just singles. But anyway, so enough about that. So can I just I know you guys are like, everybody's talking about this, and I wish somebody else would find something else to talk about. I promise we'll be talking about something else that pissed me off that happened last night too later in the program. But for now, I still got to talk about this because Armchair Popo are funny. All these people putting out these videos that are like, why didn't he just pew pew the tires? And why didn't he do this? And why didn't he do that? Have you ever had a vehicle speeding towards you and you have maybe a split second to decide whether the person driving the vehicle lives or you do? Because until you have, you should probably shut the up. Because I have. These are, and granted, well, you people that do this type of job train for these type of situations, so they should still, dude, stop watching cop buddy movies on TV. You realize how much I talked about this yesterday. It is nearly impossible to shoot out tires. They make it look really simple on TV. It's not. And the other problem is, and this is something else that's, well, why didn't he just put around through the engine block if he was in front of the vehicle at the time? Because it wouldn't have stopped the vehicle. Not right away. And what I really don't understand is, and I didn't want to say anything, but I was about 99% positive the dude that fired the fatal shot was the one that was drugged a couple months ago for like 100 yards or so and had to have multiple stitches. So dude's already gone through it once. You expect him to just sit around and wait and see if it's going to happen again? You just want to wait and see if it's gonna. You just want him to hang out and chill and say, "Well, maybe she won't actually hit me with the car." Here's the thing that look. Okay, so if you've watched the video, and I will probably find another copy of it and pull it up here in a minute, You can plainly see that if it wasn't for the fact that God was on this man's side, and I said what I said, and ice caused the drivetrain wheel to break traction, she would have been pointing right at him and accelerating at a high rate of speed. If not for the weather conditions that caused her to not be able to do what she seemed like she was trying to do. I'm not in her head in that moment. So I don't know what her thought process was. I know what his thought process was. I don't want to die today. I'm out here trying to do my job and these people keep trying to kill me. I don't want to die today. You know how I know that? Because that's a thought that's ran through my head at timer 12. In split-second decisions, I don't want to die today. Nobody who is not, and look, at this point, I'm going to tear down a wall that a lot of people like to keep up, because everybody that's ever worn an actual law enforcement badge looks at security officers like they're just a bunch of fucking morons. Some of them, yes. But having worked both sides of that, I can say that a lot of them aren't. And there are plenty of people that get involved in security either after they've done law enforcement or to start a path to get into law enforcement, and they do it for all the right reasons, and they do things the right way while they're there, and they do their jobs. And I'll be honest, in some in some circumstances, me doing what I was doing in the private sector was tougher than the other stuff. Because I had cops that hated me too. Because I'm a rent-a-cop now. So I know everybody, because I've got into this a few times online. Everybody says, well, no wonder you're biased towards the police. No, I'm not biased towards the police. I've looked at the evidence dispassionately, which I am trained to do. Most of you don't know how to do that. Most of you can't separate the emotion from the moment. I can. I can see where he was. I can see, especially even though you've got to, kind of pause it and zoom in from the camera that was way far off. I can see him bouncing off the front of the vehicle. The front, not the side, the front. Now, he was towards the side of the front, but there was a front impact with him in this vehicle, which is what led him to shoot. You can plainly see in the still shots there is an angle of entry for a bullet penetration from the windshield that is on the driver's side lower of the front of the windshield. You can tell the angle of entry and where the bullet came from by the web pattern left on the windshield, because since they're shatter resistant, weird things happen when objects go through them, and you can kind of tell the angle that it was coming from if the object manages to penetrate the windshield, if you know what to look for. This woman didn't have to die. She didn't have to die. And in her mind, maybe she really does think that ICE are Nazis. But whose fault is it if she thinks that? Because they're not. I just saw somebody else a minute ago talking about how they saw some pastor being interviewed on MSNBC. And I'm like, are you sure? Because MSNBC doesn't exist anymore, but whatever. I'm talking about how this pastor saw an ICE agent harassing a brown person and said, take me instead. And the ICE agent pulled their gun on him. Like, I'm about 90% positive that did not happen. But speaking of, armchair popo, let's take a look at something real quick, because I saw this right as I was getting ready to go on the air. And this is where the idea for the title of the show came from. So hang on. Armchair popos to the left of me and clowns to the right of me. Exhibit A of Armchair Popo.
So this is a gun, and when you have a gun, you can choose where you aim it. Let's say your gun is holstered and you're standing off to the side of the front of a vehicle. One, you could step aside and pop, pop, pop the tires, or everyone else standing around you could pop, pop, pop the tires. You could shimmy to the side, not pull out your weapon, and just write down the car's license plate and do a proper investigation. But no, from 3 feet away, an ICE agent named Steve held a gun to the face of a 37-year-old woman and shot her fucking face off today. This was not domestic terrorism. This is fascism. And all of you rah-rah MAGA who are saying good shot, it will fall on your doorstep soon. It will be your family. It will be your friends. It will be you. Trump anxiety syndrome is a real thing. The entire world is anxious because of this one man and all of the puppet strings he is pulling.
Is it me or does she seem entirely unwell? It might just be me. That's why I'm asking. Is it me or does she seem entirely unwell? Because to me, she seems entirely unwell. Anyway. All right. So let's find out what other trouble we can get into today. Oh, yeah. So I want to show you guys this too. Because for everybody who wants to know why the officer acted in the fashion that, well, I'm sorry, the agent, let's use the proper term because he is an ICE agent. He is a federal agent. But for those of you who don't seem to think that a federal ICE agent is a police officer, let's break a few things down. One, they have a badge and a gun. They also have handcuffs. They're legally limited in their scope of powers for arrest. What might you ask? Are there scope of powers for arrest for American citizens? If American citizens are impeding an investigation, harassing them, or otherwise putting their lives in danger, they do in fact have arrest powers against American citizens. You can plainly see if you watch the beginning of the video, these people, when they get out of their vehicle with their lights on, wearing vests that say police, all of them, you can hear one of them say, okay, that's it. This is enough. Get out of the car. This woman, according to all reports, had been harassing them all day in Minneapolis, Minnesota. There had been vehicles that had been rammed that same day. Remember, the officer who wound up being in front of the vehicle based on the fact that she was refusing to follow commands had a split second to decide whether he wanted to be drug 1,000 yards again. I know I'm making the range up, but he was drugged for a long time, folks. I think he had to have 30 stitches in one of his legs. And this that I'm about to show you is the reason why this man did what he did. And nobody talks about this enough, I don't feel like. This is another incident, and we're gonna go into this in a second. But I want you to watch this real quick.
As the Jeep continued to advance, Officer Caprio got off one shot. WJZ won't show the rest, but a somber jury saw and heard Amy Caprio dying from massive crushing.
All right, so we're gonna watch this again because it's not very long. And I'm sorry if I probably should have said something about a trigger warning, and I didn't. But so you can plainly see the view's a little weird, but you can see officer already has gun drawn, commanding vehicle to stop. Vehicle is right there on this side of the frame, and then this happens. She's telling them to stop and watch.
As the Jeep continued to advance, Officer Caprio got off one shot. WJZ won't show the rest, but
now I would like to point out she is in almost the exact same position that this ICE agent was in at the beginning of the scenario that we're discussing. In front of the vehicle, but slightly off to the side, weapon drawn. This is almost exactly where the bullet entered the windshield. If you look at the steel shots for the incidents that we're talking about right now, and this woman died in the line of duty. When you have maybe an eighth of a second to decide what happens to you, that's not a lot of time. Everybody acts like it's an eternity. You see all of these movies and all these recounts from people that have gone through these type of experiences where they're like the ones that live are always like, oh my God, it's like time slowed down. And this whole eighth of a second felt like an eternity, and all these different scenarios were running through my head. I'm not gonna lie, that is partially true because you're in a heightened state of awareness. So there's all kinds of things that are running through your head in that moment. But it's not one of those things where you can just go, "Oh, maybe I'll just shoot the tires," or "Oh, maybe I'll just shoot the engine." No, you have a decision to make in a split second. Does the person trying to kill you with a vehicle die, or do you? I know what my choice would be every single time. And again, until you have been in that situation, you should probably sit this one out. Because again, I have. I have. I stopped someone from getting run over in a parking lot by jumping in front of a speeding vehicle with my gun drawn. Luckily for me, they stopped. That close. But they stopped. Or I would have been in the same situation. Because I was trying to stop a group. It was actually several people who were trying to get into a club at one of the places that I worked, and somebody came tearing through the back of the parking lot. So I saw what was happening, was just didn't even think. Just jumped out from around the entry door and drew my weapon and commanded them to stop their vehicle immediately or I would shoot. Lucky for me, they listened. Or either they wouldn't be here today or I might not be here today. So I have been in that very situation. And until you have been, you should probably shut up. Because you don't know. Yes, these people train. Yes, these people spend hours honing their skills because they want to live. Not only do they want to try to make a difference, they want to live. But the idea that in this less than eighth of a second, dude could have been Superman and shot out 2 tires and an engine block. No. Not to mention the fact that if you start shooting at tires, there's people all over the place. So if he misses and there's a ricochet, God knows what would have happened. These people have unserious and unreal expectations about what it is that law enforcement is supposed to be able to do and what it is that law enforcement is actually able to do. And the fact that even with everything that we can see, and the fact that you can plainly see this dude bouncing off the front of this car like a fucking pinball, everybody's still like, well, he could have done something differently. What could he have done differently? Let her take. She was already driving. That's the other part that nobody talks about. The fact that she gunned it so hard that her drivetrain wheel spun means she was already trying to drive unsafe for the weather conditions. If he hadn't tried to stop her, there's God knows what would have happened further down the road. And that's the other thing. Nobody talks about this part. If as a law enforcement officer, you have the capability and the ability to stop someone and you choose not to, and they inflict harm later on, in certain jurisdictions, you can actually be you can be civilly sued and criminally charged. So these people are, well, he should have just let her go, or he should have just done this, or he should have just done that. You don't understand how this job works. You don't understand the pressure that these people are under all the time. Now, some of this may have loosened up a bit with the recent Supreme Court ruling that that police officers don't actually have a duty to do much of anything unless they choose to, which is probably one of the most retarded Supreme Court things I've ever heard in my life. And still and yet here we are. So one of the things we'll be talking about later today in the program is, of course, the fact that in the dead of night, 15 Republicans decided to push through 3 years worth of funding for the Abominable Care Act, along with the rest of their Democrat traitors. So we'll get into that at some point today, if I don't have a stroke on the air first. Good God. Okay. All right. So it is Friday, though, so I don't try to be super serious on Fridays. Keep forgetting that it's actually Friday. It's been a while since I've done anything close to a full work week. Anyway, So this is something I want to talk about because this is the Maduro thing. If you guys haven't seen this yet, this is from Amy Curtis. She'll be on with me for the weekend news roundup later. So I'm probably going to talk to her in more detail about this one. So I don't know how far I'm going to go into it right now. But when I saw the headline of this, I thought this was absolutely amazing. So Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro and his wife Celia Flores welcomed 2026 by being hauled out of their Caracas compound and transported to a New York prison following a successful and surgical military operation. Pardon me. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi. Hang on. What the heck, man? We're not supposed to have this much pollen in January. Sorry. I was good. And then I started trying to talk, and all of a sudden now my nose is like, we're not so good anymore, sir. Let me see if this helps a little bit. Um, Pam Bondi unsealed the indictment showing that Maduro was charged with narco terrorism, conspiracy, cocaine importation conspiracy, possession of machine guns and destructive devices, and conspiracy to possess machine guns and destructive devices against the United States, while Flores acted as the president of the National Assembly. Both have since pled not guilty to the plethora of charges against them. The only people sad about Maduro's ouster are all the leftists in America, of course, well, and probably China and Russia and maybe the mental midget of the North. Um, but you know, same people that kept doing no kings protest are apparently fine with a dictator. Just throwing that out there. They haven't met a dictator they didn't love, especially if that affection means they can resist President Trump, otherwise known as Orange Man Bad. But for Venezuelans oppressed by the Maduro regime, including the millions forced to flee the socialist state, Maduro's ouster is a sign of a better future for the South American nation. We hope. I have to throw that caveat in there because you never know. But hopefully. They celebrated in the streets in several cities after the news broke. Now those Venezuelans are stepping up again and trolling Maduro in his prison cell. Yes, you heard me right. He is being trolled in his prison cell. I'm trying to get something to load. Hang on. So this is from Polymarket. Just in, Venezuelans who fled to America are sending Maduro prison mail, trolling their former dictator with memes. Sorry, that's fun. Translated, it reads, Happy New Year from the Venezuelan people. A letter of anonymous messages for Nicolas Maduro, Moros, who is currently in New York. Not Shakespearean by any means, but the laughing cat in this scenario makes it rather hilarious. I was trying to pull it up on the screen for you, but for some reason, Town Hall's pages are being cranky today. I don't know what's going on. All right, so let's go ahead and take a break because I'm going to go. I already took my allergy pill, though. I don't know what else I can do. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and take a break real quick just because it's kind of an impromptu one, and I wasn't really planning to take one. Well, I mean, paying attention to the fact that it was time to take one, I guess would be a better way to put it. We're going to play the song again, so hang on. If I can find it again. All right. My name is Rick Robinson. You're listening to my show, and we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
He's for an oath to make a difference. Ran for danger while others turned away. Now it seems the world's against stands here, and no one knows quite what to say. Live the life and follow the path forged in fire, burning bright through the darkest night. Though the world may turn its back on him, he still stands. Won't lose the fight. He walked through fire with no applause, carried burdens that nobody saw, judgmental words and glares that wound. A price has been paid that few can understand. Live the life and follow the path forged in fire, burning bright through the darkest night. Though the world may turn its back on him, he still stands. Won't lose the fight. Maybe strength was an armored war. Maybe it was the truth they chose to endure. When the world turned cold and he found some more, he still rose, still carried on. Live the life and follow the path forged in fire, burning bright through the darkest night. Though the world may turn its back on him, he still stands. Won't lose the fight. Backbone made in fire. Still alive. To every former but current member of law enforcement, thank you.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
I have been trying to work on that, but for today, definitely we're gonna have to run the disclaimer. Anyway, Denny, send me links to any of them that you want me to start pushing out, and I'll get you. Anyway, well, text me after the show. Let's not discuss it on the air. All right. Anyway, okay. So remember I told you I was gonna show you guys a much better angle of the ICE agent bouncing off the car like a pinball. I found it. I found it. I did. I found it. Now I got to find it again, though. So hang on. I had it here somewhere. Where to go? I had it. There it is. Okay. I knew I had it somewhere. Wait, no. No, so this isn't the one that I thought it was, but this is a good primer to that one anyway. Where is that one? I had it. I know I did. Oh, wait, there it is. Okay. So sorry, I have too many tabs open. All right. So let's start here. I know you guys are like, but everybody's shown these things like a million times. I don't care. Because everybody still thinks that I'm retarded for pointing all this out. So we are going to continue to have this discussion until people see what I see. Do you see what I... Oh, wait, sorry. Wrong time of year for that. My bad. All right, here we go. So This is the first one where you can plainly see. So here's the officer who's trying to get her out of the car. You can see him right there trying to open the door handle. Didn't work. And so here's this first. See the dude right there. This is the dude that fired the shot. This is also the dude who just a few months ago was nearly killed in a very similar situation. Now look, you can plainly see that he did not have his gun in the ready position. Watch. Hang on. Gun is still in holster. Everyone is acting as if he already had his gun pointing in her direction before she ever started accelerating. That is not what happened. Watch. Look. Arm at his side, gun, hand probably on gun. That's pretty standard practice. Starts the process to draw the weapon. Weapon is now clear of holster. Vehicle is already moving. You can plainly see right back here at the very beginning when he starts the process to draw his weapon. Well, not in this shot, because by then I think she had already started moving. But further back in the frame, which you can't see in this shot, you can see that she had gunned her gunned her engine to the point where her drivetrain wheel broke traction. And you can plainly see it spinning. But again, this guy who, remember, this is how this started. So at this point, the guy that is, eventually in front of the vehicle is way over here. So if you want to talk about things that could have been done differently, Chica could have taken off into this little yard over here and then went around everybody and didn't do it. So we're going to watch this one more time well, not at full speed because it's already broken down slow-mo, but one more time. Here we go. Now, I would like to point out to you that after this being slowed down, it is even more apparent that dude was in front of the vehicle as she was accelerating, and she knew he was there. So there's the shot. That's the one that went through the windshield. And well, why did he keep shooting? You've obviously never been through firearms training qualification in any type of private security, private investigator, or law enforcement capacity if you're asking me that question, because they are trained to fire in 3-shot bursts. I mean, I can't say that in every jurisdiction, but I know in Oklahoma, it's 2 to the chest, 1 to the head. When you're dealing with an armed suspect, it's not in a vehicle. Anyway, all right. So then we go on to this one. Y'all ready for this one? Hang on. I did it out of order, so it's not working quite right. Hang on. All right, now it should work. Now, this is a bit more zoomed in than any other version of this that I have seen. So, and it's not very long, so we may actually watch it a couple of times. But I want you to pay attention to this. Hang on. What I'm going to do is probably see exactly where the impact occurs, what the timestamp is, and then back it up and freeze frame it so you guys can see exactly when dude was struck by a 5,000-pound moving vehicle. Right? See, look, he's actually this is something that I didn't even that I had heard other people say, but I hadn't been able to see. Dude was actually being drug again by the vehicle. Watch, look right here. I know it's grainy and terrible, but you can plainly see dude was hit right there. And as she starts accelerating, he's still with her. The human body cannot move that quickly on its own. That is a vehicle pushing him along. So again, Now, I'm going to ask this question, and I'm going to plainly ask you this question. You are a law enforcement officer. You are in the process of trying to get a subject out of their vehicle who has been maliciously dealing with you all day long, and she starts speeding towards you and hits you with their car. What are you going to do in that instant? Because I know what I would do. I would do exactly what he did. Because I'm sorry. And I'll be honest, as somebody who used to train my own team whenever, I started doing the private sector stuff, I would tell them all the time, it is much better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6. So if you're ever at a split second decision where you have to decide whether you die or somebody else does, please choose somebody else. Because I don't want to go to your funeral. But that's why all of this is so nuts. This is what is driving me absolutely insane about every single bit of this. Is we have people watching the same events in real time when they were occurring. We have people that have gone through and slowed down the video so you can see plainly what was happening, when it happened, how it happened, why it happened. And everybody who's on one side of the argument wants to see nothing but their version of the events instead of being able to look at this and going, hey, yes, this is a terrible thing. This woman didn't need to die. She was only 37 years old. But why did this woman die? Because she bought into a leftist narrative bullshit that said, hey, these people are Nazis and they're rounding up brown people. I told you guys this was going to happen when you've got fucking Joe Biden and half of the leadership in the country telling you that Republicans are Nazis and that ICE agents are Gestapo and that Donald Trump is fucking Hitler. Eventually, stuff like this is going to start happening, and they wanted it to happen. This is why they won't let go of the narrative now. This is why, even though if you have taken even a half a second to look at this stuff, you can plainly see what happened. But they won't let go of the narrative now because they feel like they're winning the narrative war, because this proves to them that everything they've been saying about us and everything that they've been saying about Trump and everything that they've been saying to ICE is true. And they know that enough people will buy into their viewpoint that they're never going to let it go. It's not going to happen. They're not going to let it go. It's insane to me. And this reinforces the idea that I have had now for honestly longer than the last few months. I don't see any way this country comes back together again. I wish I did, but I don't. Because whatever brainwashing is happening, the same brainwashing that they accuse us of having done to us, is complete now. Because these people are looking at unrefutable evidence of what happened, and they're refuting it. You can plainly see dude bouncing off the car. You can plainly see that he didn't even draw his weapon until she was accelerating towards him as he was bouncing off the car. How do you have that? Honest question. How do you reason with people like that? Can you reason with people like that? I'm going to show you something else here in a second. Because everything that I've seen camera-wise has been kind of muted. But I did ask 2 different AIs if any portion of this image that I'm about to show you was artificially generated, and both of them confirmed the only thing that they could tell was added was the little marker. I don't actually remember the color of the vehicle because, like I said, all the footage that I've seen has coloration kind of muted. But I'm going to show you this anyway. Hang on. This is apparently an over the head still shot, maybe captured by a drone. And again, I did run it through 2 different forms of AI to try to see if it could find any record of any part of this being artificially generated. And it plainly said that with as much detail as in the image, that it would have been impossible for AI to render it in that kind of detail. So both of them said that, something very similar. So if this is an actual image overhead of what happened, and it looks like it is because you can see the dude reaching into the car, which we can see in the other frames. This is where Guy was. Plainly and obviously in front of the vehicle. Damn, Steven in the chat dropping all kinds of $5 words today. Luckily for you guys, I can understand what he said. A philosophically divergent society is invariably heading towards dissolution or to dissolution, and I agree. But how did we get look, I get differences of opinion. I do. I'm fine with differences of opinion. As long as you're willing to have rational discussions with me about your differences of opinion, I'm fine with those things. Nobody's right 100% of the time, and anybody who tells you that they're right 100% of the time is a liar. But when you have real-time events captured in video from every possible angle because everybody's out for social media clicks nowadays. And I mean, this reminds me of the episode. There was a sci-fi show back in the day called Continuum. It was one of the first times that I can ever remember them, blatantly filming a sci-fi show in Canada and letting you know that it was actually in Canada. But this was a chick that was from the future who came back to the past because a bunch of escaped convicts time travel too, and somehow she was included in the mess anyway. If you haven't seen the show, you should check it out. It was actually pretty cool. And it's one of the rare shows anymore that actually has a beginning, a middle, and an end, which is kind of my whole go-to anymore for TV. I'm tired of investing in my time in stuff that, gets maybe a season and there's no resolution. And any more seasons are so much shorter that I'm like, dude, it takes like 5 seasons to get to the point where actors even understand how to play their characters right. Anyway. So back to this though. This reminds me of one of the scenes in that show because she has this computer in her head. So she talks to the kid who eventually becomes the guy who invents all the technology that's in her head, and he's like testing it in his little barn right now. So she convinces him to get her all the CCTV footage and every other bit of source of information they can find about an assassination that happened, and he feeds it into I don't remember what the hell they called the damn thing, but it's the computer that's in her head. And suddenly she's rendering this 3D environment based on all the different information that's coming in from the pictures. That's pretty much what we had here. Not all put together, but we had enough camera angles that you can plainly see. And I'm telling you right now, if the officer had been in the wrong, I would be one of the first people screaming about the officer being in the wrong. Because I'm sorry, when cops do screw up, they need to be held to a higher standard because they're the ones that are basically the blue line between us and the rest of the horde. And if they're not doing their job right, then that causes problems for everybody else. If there was even a hint, if there was even a hint that something in that shoot wasn't right, I would be the first ones telling you that. Everything that I have seen, from the web pattern on the windshield, the entry point of the bullet, the point where he was standing, the fact that he hadn't even drawn his weapon yet, that you can see in the slow because it happened so fast, everybody thought his weapon was already drawn. It wasn't. That's the other thing. You want to talk about somebody who's trained? Think about how quickly he was able to get that weapon clear of his holster. That is muscle memory. That is training. That is somebody that cares about their job. That is somebody who is trained and trained and trained and trained. So in a split second moment, when every tick of the clock matters, he can do what needs to be done. That's why I'm so mad about all this. That's why I'm so upset about all this. Because every time I look at all of this, every time I see a new angle, every time I see a new direction that we can see what happened, it corroborates everything that I've been saying since the moment it happened. I've never in my life called a shooting justified because I don't like that term. But this was a good shoot. He didn't have any other option at that point. Because again, we're seeing this in slow-mo. So for us, it seems like this is taking 5, 10, 15 seconds to all go by. This happened in an eighth of a second. And we are putting so much pressure on law enforcement nowadays. And we have been. ever since Barack Obama decided that the police were public enemy number one. But this is completely not cool. Yes, I'm saddened that a 37-year-old mom is not on the planet anymore. But it was her decisions that put her in the path of what happened that day. And that's the thing. We have to start making people live. Well, bad choice of words. We have to start making people face the consequences of their choices. I've been saying this all week. This is what happens when the everybody gets a trophy generation runs headlong into the natural universe has consequences because they've never faced them before. Most parents don't prepare their kids for the world having consequences anymore. It's what happened with George Floyd. He wasn't used to having to face consequences. He probably never had to face them before, not in that way. And it's the same thing that happened here. The very same thing that happened here. And it's sad. It really is. This is a sad day for America. This is a sad day for everybody. And it should be. Because you have half the country who thinks that law enforcement that are just trying to do their job are the enemy. I don't know how anybody's supposed to feel about that. All right, so we're going to do the military tribute on the way out. I don't remember if this is the right one or the exact right version or not, so it may just cut off abruptly because I'm actually working on rearranging this one a bit and shrinking it down because I have reached the limit of my program that I use time constraints on this one because I was testing something out. But we're gonna go to the top of the hour break now. Again, this is our military tribute because we've already played the law enforcement one twice today. Yes, today is law enforcement specific as far as first responders because they're getting the shit into the stick this week. My name is Rick Robinson. This is my show. You are listening to us live on KLRN Radio, and I'll be back. Stay tuned.
Before the oath was spoken out loud, before you stood apart from the crowd, there was a moment, quiet and clear, when you chose to stand while others stayed here. You raised your hand with a steady resolve, knowing some nights don't end when the mission's done. Not for glory, not for the pay, but for something worth more than walking away. Only hold the line. They carried the weight where the roads ran long, through dust and heat when the days went on, holding ground mile after mile, doing the work that rarely drew a smile. They stood their post when relief ran late, shoulders squared under the pull of fate. Not chasing headlines, not asking why, just staying put when others pass by. We stand a watch in different ways, different nights, the same long day. One old spoken carried through, wherever duty calls us to. Heavy We stand watch over the deep. They kept their watch where the water turns black, miles from shore with no quick way back, measuring time by the rise and the fall, answering duty's unrelenting call. Through silent hours and endless seas, they stood their post in the cold night breeze, guarding the lanes the world depends on, so others slept and the lights stayed on. We stand the watch in different ways, different nights, the same long day, one old spoken carried through, wherever duty calls us to. Simplify, Marine. We go where we're sent. We go where we're sent. They moved as one when the moment came, side by side through fire and rain. First to step where the ground was thin, not for the odds but for the ones beside them. Trust was earned in the hard way through, every promise carried by the few. No turning back once the line was crossed. They stood shoulder to shoulder as brothers, never counting the cost. We stand the watch in different ways, different nights, the same long day, one old spoken carried through, wherever duty calls us to. Air Force, the sky is our domain. Air Force, the sky is our domain. They held their focus where seconds seem eternal, soaring between clouds and blue. Every movement measured and true, knowing what one clean moment could do. They watched the whole while guarding the small, every mission tied to a larger call. Calm under pressure, steady and clear, keeping the promise from far overhead. Space Force, we guard the dark without faith. They keep their vigil where silence reigns, beyond the weather, beyond the rain, watching the paths that the world relies on, long before the warning lights come on. Cloud, no banners, no clear view, just constant care in a canvas full of stars. Standing the watch through the endless night, guarding the systems that keep us in light. While the watch is kept and the lines hold fast, there are lives still moving on the other side of that. Empty chairs and quiet phones, long goodbyes that don't feel done. Names we carry but never say, folded flags and debts we pay. Every service, every scar reaches farther than the uniform ever could. Coast Guard, we come when it matters most. They launch into storms when hope feels thin, turning back isn't an option then. Hands reach out where the waters rise, pulling lives back from the edge of time. No headlines waiting when the call is done, just breathing restored and another life won. Every rescue, every return, a quiet promise kept in the worst conditions. We stand the watch in different ways, different nights, the same long day. One old spoken carried through, wherever duty calls us to. For the ones who raised the right hand high, for the oath and didn't ask us why, for the nights you stood where freedom cost. We remember, we honor, we won't forget the loss. From the ground to the sea, to the open sky, to the guardians above where the silent stars fly, every branch, every badge, every battle scar, because you stood. We live free. Oh, we know. We stand here freely because others stood before us. We accept the weight of what was given and the cost that came with it. We promise to remember those who serve, those who stand watch still, and those who never came home.
Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the number one way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
He swore an oath to make a difference. Ran for danger while others turned away. Now it seems the world's against him, and no one knows quite what to say. Live the life and follow the path forged in fire, burning bright through the darkest night. Though the world may turn its back on him, he still stands, won't lose the fight. nobody war. Maybe it was the truth they chose to endure. When the world turned cold and he felt some more, he still rose to carry on. Live the life and follow the path forged inside us. Burning bright through the darkest night. Though the world may turn its back on him, he still stands. Won't lose the fight. Backbone made in fire. Still alive. To every former but current member of law enforcement, thank you.
And welcome back into the program, ladies and gentlemen. Hour 1 is in the books. Hour 2 is now officially underway. And don't forget, I'll be back tonight, or today, actually today and tonight, most likely, this afternoon at 3 Eastern time for the Weekend News Roundup. We may actually do some overtime on that one because it's not like there's any shortage of news to talk about. And then I do believe Aggie and I will be back tonight for He Said, She Said, starting at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. When did Fridays become such a busy work day for me? Everybody else is like coasting towards the weekend, and I'm like adding to my workload. Did I mention? Hi, my name is Rick Robinson. I'm a workaholic. My last meeting was forever ago. Anyway, all right. So we got to start talking about some of the other stuff. I spent pretty much the entire first hour talking about the shooting again, but I felt like it was time to kind of break it down and kind of give you guys all the different angles that I was able to find from it and all that stuff. So, but we're going to start talking about some other stuff. So let's get into this whole Operation Absolute Resolve thing. Because, so again, I have never been anyone who's ever used the phrase Trump is playing 4D chess without snickering until now. Because this puts China in a hell of a strategic predicament in Latin America. And nobody's really talking about that yet. So, because everything's been sucked up by the shooting, let's rewind a little bit here and go back to Saturday. So, on Saturday, the Trump administration conducted a high-precision operation that captured none other than Nicolas Maduro. After he was like, "Come get me, you coward," Trump says, "Challenge accepted." Anyway, Venezuela's narco-terrorist dictator and his wife, Celia Flores, to face criminal charges. This is part of the administration's revival of the Monroe Doctrine that we have now lovingly started calling the Donroe Doctrine around here, to reassert American dominance in the Western Hemisphere with the objective of ensuring the homeland security free from foreign influence and coercion. So the capture of Maduro presents a significant strategic setback in Latin America and in the Caribbean, and a financial headache for the CCP. Hang on. And I know it's a rule. Do I even have? I haven't had to play that in so long. Do I even have it loaded anymore? I don't think I do. I mean, I already paused the show, so let me fix it. Yeah, I have the other one instead. So let me. I need to get. See, this is part of that. I love to do this job, but I don't like the setup work that has to happen behind the scenes. I have an entirely new setup now where I could have all this stuff just set up and ready to go, and have different scenes for different shows on the board and all this stuff, and have all the different sound effects ready to go, etc. And I just haven't been able to find the time to do it. But since I've now said CCP not once but twice, I got the audio. Wait, that's not it. What the hell? What the hell? That's not even the right thing. What just happened? Let me hear this again. Did I mention my boards have been crazy lately? This one's probably going to be it, though. Let me try this again. Live radio.
China is asshole.
There we go. That's the one I was looking for, because it's true. Anyway, sorry. And yeah, for those of you that listen later, I don't take the mistakes out because you guys usually email me laughing at me about these things, so I leave them in on purpose. But anyway, so this presents a very specific set of problems for China. So after Beijing had released a lengthy white paper in December 2025 detailing plans to increase engagement in the region, it reveals a lot about China too. But ultimately, how all this affects Beijing in the long run will depend on what happens next in Venezuela. Some of the potential implications for China: Venezuela has come to play a central role in China's Belt and Road Initiative. For those of you who don't know what that is, please uh, tag Stacy Lennox. She writes for PJ Media. I think she still writes for them. I think it's been a minute, but I think she's still technically able to write over there. But she has done extensive breakdowns on China's Belt and Road Initiative. Some point I might actually see if she wants to come on sometime and discuss those things again, since we did do a show together before life got crazy. Beijing and Caracas upgraded bilateral relations to all-weather comprehensive strategic partnership in 2023. Hugo Chavez, Maduro's predecessor, had signed numerous trade agreements with Beijing in 2006, describing the budding relationship with China as the Great Wall to the American hegemony. China has loaned more than $60 billion to Venezuela to fund various projects over the years. China is Venezuela's most important creditor and top buyer of its oil. Not anymore. According to about 80% of the South American country, accounting for about 80% of the South American country's oil exports. And consequently, Venezuela became China's top debtor in Latin America. Venezuela currently owes China between $13 and $15 billion, primarily under a loans for oil arrangement. After Operation Absolute Resolve, the future of Venezuela's outstanding debt to China is uncertain. We'll probably just wipe it off the books. It's possible that Beijing will never see that $13 to $15 billion repaid, because we're probably just going to wipe it off the books, which isn't great news for its already ailing economy. China is also the world's leading oil importer. Venezuela crude accounted for close to 7% of China's oil imports in October of 2025. Beijing tends to obscure the origin of sanctioned oil. Exports to China were actually expected to increase before the incident. This operation and the ongoing oil quarantine are a blow to China's energy supplies. Beijing is left with one less alternative. Oil shipments from Venezuela to China are at a standstill. Chinese teapot refineries, accounting for roughly a quarter of the country's refining capacity, have become increasingly reliant on Venezuelan oil and will, of course, thusly be affected by the lack of Venezuelan oil. Iran, another source of China's oil, seems to be on the brink of collapse. Oh no, say it ain't so. Collapse could also be on the horizon for the Castro regime, which has been dealing with fuel shortages and blackouts. Oh, so wait, you're telling me that all the communists and all the dictators that have been a thorn in our side are facing imminent collapse? Really? Really? No wonder the left is so pissed. So anyway, this is bad for China from a strategic standpoint, as Cuba is a major beachhead for the CCP. Damn it, I got to do it again.
China is asshole.
I have rules. I still have to follow them, damn it. In the region, at the end of last year, the Chinese military simulated battles around Cuba as part of a war game exercise. Beijing currently operates spy bases across the island. If the Castro regime were to fall, the CCP would likely, god dang it, lose those
China
facilities.
is asshole.
President Trump had something to say about Cuba as well. Let's watch and listen to this together. Hang on. Oh, sure, I can finally hop into chat for a minute and y'all get quiet on me. It's almost like you guys work for a living or something.
Cuba is ready to fall.
Yes.
Cuba looks like it's ready to fall. I don't know if they're going to hold out. But Cuba now has no income. They got all of their income from Venezuela, from the Venezuelan oil. They're not getting any of it. And Cuba literally is ready to fall. And you have a lot of great Cuban Americans that are going to be very happy about this.
Are you considering U.S. action in Cuba?
We're not. I think it's just going to fall. I don't think we need any action. It looks like it's going down. It's going down for the count. You ever watch a fight?
I have.
They go down for the count. And Cuba looks like it's going down.
Okay, so I will say his little gaggle behind him, like cracking up laughing. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. I just, I keep, and maybe it's my Gen X upbringing, but I keep having Han Solo flashbacks. Don't get cocky, kid. And I feel like we're maybe getting a little cocky. But I will say this: this if Americans still have the stones to hold on to what we're trying to do, this could change a lot of things for us in a positive way. The problem that we have is Americans are fickle, and for some reason, even when presidents do well, if the president that is in charge has control of both the House or the House, the Senate, and the executive branch, normally for some reason, the American public doesn't like that going on for very long, even when things are going well. And the problem that we have right now is even though things are going well, our lamestream media isn't letting you know that they're going well. So unless you're getting your news from multiple sources, which I encourage all of you to do, even when it comes to me, because you should never get all your news from one place. I've been telling you this for almost 20 years now. God, has it really been that long? Jesus Christ, it has been. Wow. Sorry. I do usually try to avoid those ones because, reasons. But yeah, just occurred to me that, Lord, I'm headed towards 20 years of doing this kind of stuff. Oh, man. Anyway, all right. So, and everybody's like, you've been doing this for 20 years and we're just now starting to figure out who you are. Yeah, that's how this works. That is how this works. That is exactly how all of this works. Because a lot of people give up before they start getting to the tipping point. Anyway, so let's see. But yeah, so let's break this down a little bit more. Cuba is in major trouble because Venezuela is no longer going to be bailing them out financially. China is in trouble because they have notes outstanding with Venezuela that we're probably going to not ever make sure they have to repay. China is also in trouble because they just took a big hit to their oil supply, which means guess what? All these little war games and everything else that they've been trying to do all around Taiwan to freak out the Taiwanese people, guess what? Those aren't going to be happening probably as much anymore. Then on top of that, you throw in the trouble that Iran is currently having, and I really am trying to find some really good footage of that. I will probably work on that for the rail show on Monday night because I haven't really been able to dig into that too much yet because I have been focused on this shooting. But I feel like I'm doing everybody a disservice because almost nobody else is talking about what's happening in Iran either. So I will probably, hell, at this point, I don't know. I may even do a special sometime. Not today, because I already have 3 shows today. But I might, once I can start getting it put together an hour-long special on what's going on in Iran. Which may wind up being that may be exactly what happens. I don't know if I can get it put together enough. I may actually preempt Kingdom and Country on Sunday and do that instead. Or hell, I might even be able to find a way to tie the two together. I'm usually pretty good at that. So anyway, sorry, I'm just thinking out loud. Don't mind me for a moment. But so this is as we keep going through this. So hours before the operation that we've been discussing, Maduro met with a high-level Chinese delegation to sign hundreds of bilateral agreements, reaffirming the partnership that we've been discussing during this entire line of conversation. The delegation was reportedly in Caracas, actually still during the capture. So for anybody who was wondering, that timing was not a coincidence. It sent a clear message to Xi about U.S. military capabilities and Washington's resolve to defend its interest in LAC and beyond. It's another proverbial nail in the coffin of the narrative that President Trump is a staunch non-interventionist or isolationist. Wu Xinbo, dean of the Institute of International Studies at Fudan University in Shanghai, had the following to say: the United States took such an action at a time when China's delegation was visiting Venezuela for China. And it was very embarrassing for China. So rather than setting a dangerous precedent, as left-wing outlets and politicians are claiming, Operation Absolute Resolve acted as a reminder to Beijing of the swift consequences it could face if it were to launch a full-scale invasion of Taiwan. Taiwanese officials view the mission as a powerful deterrent to Chinese aggression. So let's face it, the CCP never has and never will adhere to international law, and it will set its own precedents and create its own narratives regardless of our actions. The failure of Venezuela's Chinese-made JY-27A radar system, long touted by Beijing as one of the most capable radar systems in Latin America to detect American aircraft, exposed how unreliable Chinese weapons actually are. It's also reaffirmed to the world that American military equipment and might remain unmatched, which the world has not seen that since the botched pullout in Afghanistan. And I said it the way I said it for a reason. Get your heads out of the gutter. Not really, just kidding. Chances are that in the coming days, CCP officials will be asking questions about what other Chinese military equipment might not perform as intended. Dude, if you're new to KLR and radio, you've missed a lot of stuff. We have known how much Chinese equipment sucks when pretty much every time they try to test new rockets, there's a bunch of cows that die. You can talk to our good friend Jeff about that on his show, The Lost Wonder, and a couple other shows that he does, where he goes into this in great detail and explains how much China's equipment actually does suck. So as we close out this line of discussion, it must be noted that China failed to intervene on Maduro's behalf. Just as it took no action to protect Iran during Operation Midnight Hammer in June of 2025. This goes to show how dysfunctional the axis of evil that they've been trying to build now again is, and how limited China's leverage and capabilities are. America's adversaries are great at saber rattling, but not so much as saber using. But when push comes to shove, they aren't there to defend one another. This doesn't mean these countries don't pose a substantial national security threat, though. They absolutely do. They find other ways to work together to persistently undermine the free world and support each other's causes. So, you might be asking, what's up with Venezuela's future? What's going to be happening there? But what happens next in Venezuela, we don't really know yet. The Trump administration has a plan. I know everybody's like, he has a plan, but he never tells us what it is. Let me finish this train of thought, then I'll move on to the next thing. Hopefully everything goes according to that plan. American control of the oil and eventual regime transition, which should include stability. I will say this, Donald Trump has seen, trust me, he was in the war room when all this stuff was happening. He has seen things that were just like, and he wants to tell you so, because you can see him when he's in front of you, like at the podium. And I think that's the real reason Vance did the presser yesterday. I think that was part of it, because Trump's like, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to shut up about this much longer. Because, he saw some pretty incredible stuff. Anyway, so on Wednesday, President Trump announced that Venezuela will purchase only American products using the revenue from the $30 to $50 million barrels of oil. So, however, Rodriguez can't be trusted. She, along with Interior Minister Disoldo Cabello, is a fervent Chavista. Look who was at their swearing-in ceremony. And yeah, I'm not going to pull it up, but there's a bunch of commies there. President Trump has alluded to consequences, possibly another operation, if Rodriguez and Cabello choose not to cooperate, or perhaps the U.S. military will be deployed to secure oil sites if need be. There are many other bad actors that will have to be dealt with: Cuban military intelligence personnel, Hezbollah, Colectivos Pro Maduro paramilitary groups that are targeting anyone suspected of supporting the U.S., Venezuelan cartels, a loyal military, and Colombian drug networks and insurgents. So we're not done yet. But again, if this were a game of Go, we would be very, very close. Why could I not think of that the other day when I was trying to talk about that with Amish? I don't know why I couldn't think of the name of the game, but I did just now. I'm not even, just because I think it fits better, I'm not even going to say Donald Trump's playing a 4D chess anymore. I think I'm just going to point out that he's basically apparently a Go master. Oh, anyway. Hey, you guys are still there. Sorry, I was going through notes, so I didn't have your chat on, didn't have the chat on my screen. All right. Oh, what I don't want to play. I've been playing that song a lot. You know what? I think I'm going to play the other one that I put out. That yesterday when we go to break. It's my first attempt at dark bluegrass. Took forever to get it dialed in, but I like it. Let me get that squared away real quick, though. You know what? It might be easier to come over here and do it. Uno momento, por favor. I thought I still had this tab open. I will say this. I think I'm going to start putting them out on socials before they hit the label because we're getting a lot more action on socials. So it might actually drum up people being excited about the releases more. All right, hang on. Oh, man. That was not what I was trying to do. Not from that angle, anyway. All right, so we're going to take a break. This one, again, was one I put out yesterday. Again, kind of one of the concepts that have been rattling around in my brain. Everybody asks me, how the hell are you putting out like a new song every other day? These are all bits and pieces of songs that I have had floating around in my brain for decades and different concepts for songs. This one was not intended to be dark bluegrass, but I kind of feel like it felt it, but if it feels more natural that way. Plus, I was really kind of depressed about everything that was going on, so it just kind of fit the mood that I was in at the time. Hang on. Autoplay's gonna stop here, fellers. You're making okay, so yeah, that note to self, this does not work as well over here. Because the autoplay feature is a little weird. All right, anyway, here we go. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Darkness grips the heart of men, and truth becomes a lie. They dress their greed in borrowed prayers and call it justified. The loudest mouths preach mercy with a knife behind their smile. They laugh at those who won't bow down or walk their crooked mile. Those who stand for virtue will be rejected again and again, cast out in the cold for believing that right is still right. Even then, they'll say you're a fool for loving truth and lost for holding the line. When darkness grips the heart of men and truth becomes a lie, they trade their souls for silver and call the bargain peace. They curse the chains of righteousness while begging to be free. The crowd will cheer the liar if the lie feels warm and kind, but stones are safe for anyone who dares to reject the lies for the truth. Those who stand for virtue will be rejected again and again, branded the enemy for refusing to kneel as weak men did. They'll crown the wolves as shepherds and blindfold every eye. When darkness grips the heart of men and truth becomes alive. Blessed are the lonely who won't betray what they believe. The road is narrow, the cost is high, but chains don't set you free. I'd rather walk with scars and God than kneel with gilded hands. Truth don't need 1,000 voices, just one that dares to stand. Those who stand for virtue will be rejected again and again, but the fire they try to bury still burns in faithful men. And then let the ages judge the moment. Let heaven hear our cry. When darkness grips the heart of men, we will not live the lie. Take his name, but truth don't die. It burns eternal flame.
All right, sorry. I don't know if you guys could hear that or not, but the song was going in my ears again. All right, anyway, so we're back. We're live. You know what? I tried to, now that I've got a bunch of stuff dialed in, I tried to rework the intro a bit, and I played it yesterday. I still think I prefer this version, though. So I think this is the one I'm going to stick with for a while until I figure out what else I'm going to do with it. I like this version better. So anyway. All right, so we're back. We've got one final segment. And plenty of things to talk about. Something we really haven't talked that much about is we had 15 Republicans who basically folded like a bunch of cheap suits and helped make sure that the Abominable Care Act gets funded again for 3 more years. Why do we keep sending these clowns back to Congress if they're just going to fold? Look, I get it. We got painted into a hell of a corner with the ACA, and I understand that. But the thing that nobody seems to want to recognize is they painted us into this corner with the ACA on purpose because they want our medical system to collapse. Because if it collapses, then the boys in the federal side of things have to scoop in, pick up the pieces, and be like, well, we tried it your way, and now we're going to do fully socialized medicine. And for those of you who keep asking why we don't try things like that, look at what's going on with China right now. Look at what's going on with Cuba right now. This is what happens when you fall down the communist rabbit hole. Eventually, you just cannot find your way back out of it again. And New York City is about to be living this. Everybody keeps saying that, it's terrible for New York City. You know what? It is terrible for New York City, but it's time for voters to start facing the consequences of their votes. I am a firm believer that if we didn't, because we keep talking about how much we hate the nanny state on my side, but then Republicans do everything they can to be a nanny state for the left. We're trying to protect you from you know what? No, let them fall down. Let them figure out how the hell to pick themselves back up. Because maybe, just maybe, look, one of two things is going to happen. Either Maduro, sorry, close enough. Either Mamdani is going to be proven correct or I'm going to be proven correct. If Mondami's proven correct, then we can just adopt communist shit everywhere and live in this utopia that everybody seems to think communism's going to bring. And if I'm proven right, maybe New Yorkers will stop staying home during elections. Maybe, hopefully, possibly. But the problem with the ACA is it, and I've been saying this for a long time now. The problem with the ACA is it was, you can't build a house without a frame. For the house of socialized medicine, there must first be a frame. The ACA was the frame. And now, because everybody's terrified of what's going to happen, they just gave 100, what was it, 100 million, I don't even know the numbers. All I know is it was a one with lots of zeros after it, directly injected into the arms of big insurance. Big Med just took a hit. Yeah, let me see what that is. All right, sorry. Okie dokie. All right. So, okie dokie, artichokes. All right. So, let's see what other stuff I can rant about today in the final few minutes. Okay. So, when you have the administration starting to actually do the memes, so if you've missed it, I would encourage you to go check out the midweek edition of the Loftus Party's This Week in Memes because it was all about Marco Rubio. And yeah, I work over there, so I will occasionally plug them. So there's been this whole meme about Marco. There's actually a whole account about it now. Marco Rubio's jobs. So there's like all these memes of all these different pictures of Marco. Remember the little picture where he's hanging out in the on the Oval Office couch? I think it was the Oval Office couch, and he just looks mad about something. Everybody's been turning that into a bunch of different memes about all the different jobs. So apparently, though, Marco Rubio during a presser, actually, no, I guess it was on X. I thought it was during a presser. But no, so this is from his X account. I do not normally respond to online rumors, but feel the need to do so at this moment. I will not be a candidate for the currently vacant head coach and or general manager positions with the Miami Dolphins. While you may never know what the future may bring right now, my focus must remain on global events and also the precious archives of the United States of America. Thank you. So anybody who's paying attention will notice he didn't actually shut the door. He just said, not right now. So who knows? Maybe eventually he will be the head coach or the general manager for the Miami Dolphins. I also do find it interesting that earlier this week he did the Dave Chappelle meme. I don't have that queued up. I may find it for this afternoon. Just because I thought it was hilarious and I don't have it right now. Sorry, I'm noticing the fact that the song from this morning that I put out really, really, really early this morning is kind of blowing up, and I'm kind of excited about that. Hey, I have a fledgling label. I'm allowed to get excited when things get noticed. All right. Anyway, so let's see what else we can get into here real quick. Oh, the December's jobs numbers are out. I will say this: if paid agitators and paid protesters were actually part of our job numbers, we'd probably be doing a lot better. I think that's probably one of the reasons why So many. So here's the thing, though. I'm starting. Remember when Reagan first took office and everybody couldn't understand why the unemployment rate was staying low, but we had less and less jobs being reported? I think a lot of folks are starting businesses again. That's just my first gut reaction, but let's go through these numbers. So the U.S. Labor Department released the December's jobs reports on Friday, which fell short of expectations, with employers adding about 50,000 jobs total compared to the anticipated between 60 to 70,000 jobs. However, the unemployment rate edged down to 4.4%, below the expected 4.5% rate. So let's break this down a bit. The private sector added just 37,000 jobs, nearly half of what the London Stock Exchange expected, while the public sector added 13,000 jobs. Of those gains, 18,000 were in. Wait, hey, what? Oh, I guess it's because there were losses in on the states on some stateside stuff. I was like, how did they add 18,000 and only have 13,000 jobs recorded? But of those gains, 18,000 were in local government and 2,000 in the federal government, while the state government lost 7,000 jobs. So I guess the math is mathing. If you take 18,000 local government jobs and 2,000 federal government jobs and subtract 7,000 lost state jobs, you get 13,000 total government jobs. So manufacturing in particular declined more sharply than anyone expected, with around 8,000 jobs lost last month. I mean, come on, a lot of anyway. So the healthcare sector, which is probably the reason why the Republicans went ahead and said, well, we'll go ahead and push this thing through for a while. The healthcare sector gained around 21,000 jobs, and the food service industry added about 27,000 jobs. Both industries averaged a gain of 34,000 jobs and 12,000 jobs per month, respectively. Friday's report also revised October's job losses lower to a decline of 173,000 jobs, while November's job gains were revised down as well, leaving employment $76,000 lower than previously reported across those 2 months. So there is, in fact, and has been an employment slowdown. But again, with numbers declining in this fashion, but employment remaining low, that means more and more people are falling off the unemployment rolls, which means one of two things. They've either gone into some form of retirement, or they're doing gig work, or they are working, or they've started a company. The thing that nobody talks about when the economy actually starts kicking back off again, for people that know how to hustle and actually are willing to hustle, you can make a hell of a lot of money doing gig work. So I think that may have a lot to do with it. And also, job openings for the month were down by 900,000. So the Trump administration is saying the jobs report is indicative of the president continuing to fix Biden era practices, which led to record inflation and a cooling economy. They're also saying the economy will only continue to heat up in 2026. And I quote, the December jobs report confirms that 2025 was a blockbuster year of solid job growth, thanks to the return of President Trump's America First leadership, with over 650,000 jobs added since he took office. U.S. Secretary of Labor Lori Chavez DeRemer said, and after years of runaway inflation that crushed purchasing power for hardworking families, President Trump is cleaning up the mess he inherited from the Biden administration, making life more affordable for all Americans. Wage growth is still running strong, up 4.1% in the last 3 months, and inflation has hit its lowest level in nearly 5 years. And I quote, as we enter the new year, our economy continues gaining momentum and is well positioned for even more growth as the president doubles down on his efforts to revitalize critical industries. GDP is booming and all net job growth has continued to take place in the private sector among American born workers. The Department of Labor will continue our efforts to execute President Trump's mission to put America workers first. And it's funny because in the comment section, which I don't usually go into that much because you don't get them unless you're VIP, and I don't want to give away the milk for one of the groups that I work for free anyway. But a couple of the folks in the comment section were actually mirroring things that I was thinking as I was skimming through this article earlier today. Maybe too many leftist loons are quitting their jobs to go protest ICE. And then another one responded to that saying, I was going with paid protesters don't get counted in the jobs report, but you may also have a point. And somebody else responded, did any of them actually have real jobs in the first place? Anyway. All right. So look, The thing that I want to point out, is everybody thought when Donald Trump fired the guy that was, putting out the jobs numbers, that he was going to make sure that all we ever saw were glowing reports. Anybody notice that there haven't really been any glowing reports since the guy got fired? Look, that's the thing that I don't think anybody understands. Everybody thinks that Donald Trump is trying to spin things and to put things in the most positive light possible. After dealing with him in the public sector now for a decade, he doesn't do that very often, if you've noticed. And a lot of people haven't noticed because it's the same thing that we have going on with the shooting. We can see the same things happening in real time and have two completely disparate reactions to what we're seeing happening in real time, depending on what your ideological bent might be or how much you hate the person that's currently talking. And that's why you have to start divorcing emotion from some of this stuff. And that's where the left loses their ish, because they need you mad. They need you angry. They need you reacting out of emotion and not logic. Because if you take a look at this stuff and you actually look at what's happening, everything that they've been telling you would happen hasn't happened. Yeah, our job market is lower than we expected it to be, but they're almost all private sector jobs, or they're local government jobs, not federal government jobs. That's important. Local government is actually the one that we should care about the most, not the federal crap. Local government and state government were always supposed to exist. The general government, what are formerly known as the general government, what we now refer to as the federal government, thank you, Abraham Lincoln, was always supposed to have a minimalist footprint. There's a reason that each individual thing, well, other than like Massachusetts and a couple other places, call themselves states. There's a reason that when a country collapses, they call it a failed state. This was supposed to be a laboratory for freedom and democracy. Each state was supposed to be able to determine its own destiny. There were three things the general government was basically supposed to exist for. Three. That's it. Everything else was supposed to happen at the state level or the local level. There was a reason the founding fathers didn't want any form of a federal income tax. They didn't think it necessary. Taxation should happen at the local and the state level, because then you can never not have taxation without representation unless you just refuse to go vote. I hate to say this yet again as we start to close out the show, but our founding fathers were a hell of a lot smarter than us. And most of them would be turning over in their graves if they've seen what we did with their country. They would still be jumping up and down for joy because most of them expected this thing to barely outlast their lifetime, because it was a grand experiment at the time. But I can tell you that it wasn't that long before it started moving towards a trajectory of failure. And as Stephen pointed out right now, we are in the end stages of that failure unless we figure something out. Because when you have the same population looking at the same events happening in real time and each seeing different versions of the truth to them. Because I'm sorry, folks, there is only one truth. The one truth is that woman never should have been there. Never. But you know why she was? Because of everything that we've seen post World War II. And everybody always asking the question, if you could have stopped Hitler before Hitler became Hitler, would you do it? There's a reason the left has been calling him Hitler. They need him gone. They did everything they could to get him gone, and he's still standing. That should tell you something. Dude, I just saw today that Trump is now suing people over what he went through in New York and Georgia. The people that went after him, he's suing them for court costs and legal fees because it all fell apart. It was all a house of cards to begin with. And we knew that. For those of us that were willing to look at this dispassionately and just look at the facts, we knew. But that's why all these angry armchair popos on social media are like, why didn't he shoot out the tires? Why didn't he do this? Why didn't he do that? You know what? This is what I want you to do. Well, I can't say this without getting in trouble. But what I would encourage you to do is to recreate the events that led to the shooting and see how you would react to them, even if it's on a video game, because you can if you choose to. And I guarantee you, when you've got an eighth of a second to decide whether you go home or not, you're gonna pick you, and that's just a fact of how things are. There are very few people that would be willing to lay their life down for somebody else. And there would be very few people who would be willing to lay their life down for somebody else who is currently being a total dick in the process. So look, I don't like what happened to this woman either. I don't like the fact that we have state and local governments now that, and this is something else that I planned on talking about today until the whole shooting ate up an hour of my show. You guys realize the governor of Minnesota basically just declared war on the federal government? Nobody's talking about that. Dude has basically declared open war, even referencing like the Jefferson Davis things that happened in the 1860 something, where he spun up the National Guard to try to fight the feds before there were technically feds, but you know what I mean. I just I don't know where we go from here, because again, we can see the same things happening in real time and have a different version of the truth. The problem is, folks, there really is only one version of the truth. This was if things go the way I suspect they will go, and I'm still praying that there is time that I can be proven wrong. When we started using phrases like speaking truth to power and speaking my truth, that was the beginning of the end. Actually, probably not really. So I'm trying to figure out how to word it right, because I guess technically, since we were already we were kind of in the I don't know, the middle of nearly to the end, I guess. So this was the beginning of the actual end of all of this, unless we can find a way to pull ourselves back from this weird ass precipice that we find ourselves on. Because your truth is nothing but an unjumped opinion, not the truth. There is ultimately, when it really comes down to it, only one truth. And to quote the last Boy Scout, there are truths that are just apparent everywhere. Water is wet. The sky is blue. Those are things that are immutable facts. And for those of science nerds, well, really, no, shut up about your science crap. That's not the point. Because one of the last times I made it, well, really, the sky isn't blue. That's just how we perceive it. Blah, 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 blah. Shut up. I think that was still post Sheldon. I was actually thinking that might have been pre Sheldon, but for a second I was like, do I have Sheldon in my chat? Jesus. But anyway, look, we live in strange times, folks. So I'm gonna close out the show the way I used to close out the show back in the day. Make sure you and yours are okay first. Make sure you've got enough food and water on hand. Make sure you've got access to a generator if you need one. Just to start, if you haven't started the process to do that yet, start those baby steps, little by little. You got to make sure you and yours are okay first. Because right now we are at a fork in the road. And it's a pretty important fork in the road. We can either continue down the path that we're on to restoring America to a place of great prominence, or we can continue to watch it decline. The midterm elections are going to have a big determining factor on where we go from here. And this is why, for anybody who is listening to me right now, whether it's live or Memorex later, do not sit these elections out. Especially if you believe as I believe. Because the Republicans do not do a good job of reminding you how important midterm elections actually are. They get everybody really ginned up for the big ones. And then the midterms are kind of like, meh. But then they do things like we've been talking about off and on during this show of, 15 of them, taking money right back out of our pockets again. And then we wonder why we keep losing midterms. But I will say this. Part of the reason it's not going the way a lot of you hope is because we keep sending gridlock back to DC. Until we fix what's broken, gridlock don't work. Gridlock is a great plan when the government's doing what it's supposed to do, because then they can't do anything to mess it up. See, self-editing to mess it up once we get it fixed. But right now it's also broken that if we keep doing gridlock and deadlock and all this stuff, we're just going to keep hurtling towards these same cliffs over and over and over again. And every time the populace says, "Oh, let's try that." Oh, well, we gave them 2 years. That wasn't enough. We have no patience in this country anymore. All right, that's going to do it for this one, folks. Again, I'll be back today at 3 for the Weekend News Roundup with my friends from both Town Hall and Town Hall in Red State, respectively. Amy, why can I not? Amy Curtis. I'm in my brain. I mixed up their names. Amy Curtis from Town Hall, Brad Slager from Town Hall, as well as Red State, will have at least one or possibly more of the SHR media crew with us. Also, the loftusparty.com will be represented by myself and by Sean. And also, of course, the Digital Beacon, which I'm also the news director of. Yeah, that's not something I talk about very often either. Everybody's like, why do you... I'm like, dude, I never really stopped working. So some days I regret that fact, but I never actually stopped working. 'Cause even like when you guys weren't seeing me much on the radio, or on the streams, I was working on a children's book. Speaking of which, now that I've gotten quite a few of these songs out of my brain, I got to finish that up because I want it out in February so I can make sure my granddaughter gets a copy for her birthday. So that'll be happening probably in the second half of this month once I get everything that I have in the pipeline scheduled to get released. But that's going to do it for this one, folks. My name is Rick Robinson. Want to take just a moment to thank you to everybody who hung out with us today. Numbers were kind of low, but I know we're all coming back from holidays, and I haven't been promoting very well, so I ain't mad about it. For those of you that are hanging out in the chat, thank you very much for doing so. I'll be back in a couple hours. Stay tuned.